Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Story-Driven Hiring, How Content and Culture Solve Recruiting and Retention Challenges. This is going to be an awesome session. Over the next hour, we're going to explore how strategic storytelling can transform your hiring and retention efforts, turning authentic content into a powerful employer brand advantage. Today's webinar is especially valuable for talent acquisition leaders and frontline hiring managers looking to bridge the gap between talent attraction, recruitment, and retention through meaningful communication. If you're here to learn how to attract top talent, reduce attrition, and foster a deeper sense of connection through content, you're in the right place. We're joined by two amazing speakers. We've got Bernadette Van Giesen and Anna Lippi, both from Stories Incorporated. Bernadette brings a rich background in employer branding and growth marketing, while Anna offers deep experience in uncovering real employee stories that drive impact. Together, they're going to share actionable strategies to align messaging that empowers hiring teams. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. Please take a moment to locate the chat feature located at the upper right-hand side of your screen. This is a great place to share thoughts and connect with fellow attendees. If you have questions for our speakers today, please use the Q&A tab so that we can find them quickly. Your network makes the dream work. So if you want to connect with other participants today, please drop your LinkedIn into the chat. Also, go ahead and drop in the chat where you're tuning in from. Today's webinar is being recorded. We're going to send out the recording usually within 24 hours of the webinar ending, but a lot of times I can get it out same day. And so now let's dive in. Bernadette, thank you so much for being here today and for co-leading this conversation. I'm going to hand things over to you, but I'll be watching from the audience. If you need anything at all, just let me know.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. And yeah, I'm very honored to be here and very excited to connect and learn with you all today. And Anna, thanks for joining me on the stage as well.
Happy to be here.
Yes, want to give people a few more moments to join, but yeah, please tell us where you're tuning in from. Please drop your LinkedIn if you want to connect. I'm going to drop mine here as well. And love seeing all these people coming in from Houston and Philadelphia, Yucca Valley. Let's see if I pronounce this, Piscataway, New Jersey. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We're going to give folks, we're going to jump into our poll and give people, another minute or so to join. And then we're going to get into our session. So please, as Josh said, please share questions. Let's participate in the chat. We will be answering questions throughout the session. So feel free if you have a question live as we're talking to drop that question in the chat. And then between slides, we'll do our best to get to them all. Okay. So we are going to start with a poll. And today we are talking about story-driven content and how to use strategic storytelling to solve your hiring challenges. So we thought it would be great to start with a poll of what is your biggest recruitment pain point. So hopefully that'll be going live in a second here. But we'd love to hear, what the biggest challenge you're facing in your recruitment strategy, whether it's brand awareness, hard to fill roles, applicant quality, internal alignment, or employee turnover. So we'll give everyone about 45 seconds to answer this. See, hard to fill roles is taking an early lead. That's not too surprising. And as a little spoiler, we're going to be sharing case studies and really specific and actionable examples for all of these different things, all these different pain points. So it's nice to kind of see where people's heads are at. Hard to fill roles still in the lead. Employee turnover, a big one. That's interesting. Brand awareness. Awesome. Any of this surprising to you, Anna?
No, this just about makes sense.
Yeah. I'm glad to see internal alignment isn't like the leading pain point. So hopefully folks are having some good conversations internally. Okay, we have about 10 more seconds. Okay. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see. Sorry about that. I should have been sharing this all along, the results here. So Looks like hard to fill roles was the biggest pain point, followed by brand awareness and employee turnover. So kind of all across the map, all across the candidate funnel. So it's going to be great guidance for our conversation today. All right. So before we get into the bulk of our conversation today, we just want to take a moment to introduce ourselves. So a quick intro to Stories, Inc. We are your global content partner for uncovering the real stories that bring company culture to life. We then turn those authentic stories into videos, blogs, photos, graphics, any type of digital content that fuels all of your talent channels. And these are just a few of our wonderful clients. So a little fun fact, every image that you see in this presentation features a photo of a real employee that we've interviewed. So this here is Jenny on the screen here. And she is a real storyteller, and so is every face that you will see throughout this webinar. So we really believe really strongly in the power of showing real employees and spotlighting real employee voices. So these will be all real photos shared throughout. Okay, so quick personal introduction. Josh introduced us briefly, but my name is Bernadette Van Giesen, and I lead marketing at Stories, Inc. So I've been with Stories, Inc. for about 6 years, and bring employee storytelling teachings to life throughout all of our marketing channels. So not only do I believe really strongly in what we do, but I have sat in your shoes from a content creation and distribution standpoint. So a lot of the things we're going to talk about today about bringing stories to life, maximizing across all of your channels are things that I really practice day to day in our marketing. And then Anna, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Sure. Hi, I'm Anna Lippy. I'm Director of Customer Success at Stories. I've been with Stories 7 years, and I co-lead our project team, so making sure we're doing excellent work for our clients. And before that, I was actually in the role of uncovering stories and helping to create great content. Before Stories, I worked in internal comms at a consulting firm. So really excited to be on the webinar and connect with all of you.
Yes, awesome. So enough about us, and let's get into the meat of our session today. So we are really excited to dive in. Here's what you can expect over the next 52 minutes. So first, we will be covering storytelling foundations. So what employee storytelling really is and why it's such a powerful tool for your recruitment. Second, how storytelling aligns with your recruiting strategy overall. So everything from aligning with internal stakeholders to planning an employee storytelling initiative. And finally, we're going to get really tactical. So how to apply storytelling to solve 4 of the most common recruitment challenges, supported by real case studies from our clients. So with that, and I do want to remind everyone, please share comments and questions in the chat. We would love to keep the conversation going. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anna to talk about some foundational storytelling concepts here.
Great. Thanks, Bernadette, and excited to dive in. So like Bernadette said, we'll be talking a lot about stories today. So first, we wanted to walk through kind of what employee storytelling really is, why it's so impactful, and how to think about it as a core part of your recruitment and retention strategies. And so just to take a step back and kind of ground us in the concepts, understanding why employer brand matters and the real ROI it can deliver for your recruitment and retention efforts. So if you're here, chances are you already understand the value of employer branding, but you might be in a position where you're also making the case for investment internally with leadership or other stakeholders. So that might be you. So here's a few key stats that really help connect employer brand to bottom line impact. So first, as you see on the screen, 88% of job seekers say they consider a company's employer brand before applying. So that speaks directly to attraction and conversion. So candidates are forming opinions about your workplace before they even ever click apply. That's pretty compelling. And then companies with a strong employer brand see a 50% lower cost per hire and fill roles 50% faster. And finally, organizations with a strong employer brand experience a 28% reduction in turnover. That tells us that a strong employer brand converts candidates that stay longer and perform better. And so we know that the best employer brands are powered by real employee stories, which you can hear in our name. So storytelling has become a buzzword, and we wanted to talk about how we at Stories, Inc. actually define a story and how to kind of cut through that buzz. So first, stories are specific. Something actually happened. There's a specific moment in time or an experience being described. Second, stories are personal. So the storyteller is sharing something real about themselves that creates an emotional connection. Third, stories are realistic. So the best stories give candidates an honest look at what it's really like to work at your workplace. Fourth, your company is a character. So your company should play a role in making this story happen. For example, maybe a specific benefit helps someone navigate a life event. That's really compelling. And finally, stories inspire action. After hearing a great story, a candidate should feel a desire to opt in or opt out. And what stories aren't are generic testimonials and platitudes that could be said about almost every organization. And we have some examples. So these examples here are kind of platitudes that we hear a lot. And there's nothing inherently wrong with these sentiments, but without stories to back them up, they fall flat and they don't really help differentiate your company or your organization. So things like, we're like a family. We work hard, play hard. Every day is my best day. We have a collaborative culture. I have great work-life balance. Again, nothing wrong with that in itself, but they just don't really stand out without employee stories to back them up. So these statements don't differentiate your culture and could actually be said by any company. When you pair these sentiments with a real story, it's proof that you are who you say you are. So we wanted to share an example of what a story looks like and how it is different from that kind of testimonial.
Yeah, great setup there, Anna. So we have a really great employee spotlight here from Walter, who is a team member at AARP. And he shares a story that kind of supports the idea that the company supports employees through really hard times. So here is Walter's story.
People often ask, like, why have you been here 18 years? My wife gets diagnosed with breast cancer. I lean a lot on the resources that we provide as an individual, that AARP provides. For me to step away and be there for my family, and no one here pressured me on this is due. It was, take care of your family. It really put things into perspective for me and what is truly important. The caregiving leave, and then through our benefits department, figured out that we also have resources such as therapy. It really comes back full circle, that seeing yourself, in a situation as a caregiver, and again, just being reflective of, I work for an organization that gets this. It put it into perspective for me. When you do go through things, this is an organization that, is walking the talk.
Are my slides on the screen, Anna?
Not yet.
Okay. One second. Sorry, folks. Okay. So that is just a really beautiful and compelling story. And you could imagine if someone had just said, AARP is the kind of place that takes care of their team members. That's a nice thing to hear, but you really don't know what that looks like. And so that story there follows all the things that Anna shared that defined a story. It's something specific happened. He's talking about his wife's health experience. The company's a character, the benefits came into play. He shares a personal reflection on what the experience means to him. So all of those things really bring AARP's culture to life.
People.
So now that we've thought a little bit about what an employee story is and why it matters to employer brand, let's talk about what they look like in action. So one story can take on many formats, and ideally you are making the most of your stories by turning them into several of the mediums below. So stories can be video, which can range from short form spotlights like the one we just saw, to long form culture videos featuring multiple voices and themes. Stories make for great graphics and lift out quotes for engaging on social. Real employee photos are a great thing to have in your toolkit, and they really help candidates visualize your culture and are great for accompanying those quotes in blogs. Written content like blogs, Q&As, story snippets are a great way to infuse personality and cultural insight into your website and digital channels. And then finally, emails, I think, are a really underrated use case for stories. So I would encourage you to think about including storytelling in talent community or interview prep emails to build that emotional connection over time. So once you build this library of stories, they really can go everywhere. So career site, social media, ads, job descriptions, emails, events, internal channels. Here at Stories, I think we really encourage you to think of storytelling as an always-on content engine. So fueling all of your channels all the time to reach candidates at every stage of their journey. So now that we've laid that foundation, what employee storytelling is and why it matters, we're going to zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger picture and answer the question, how does storytelling fit into your overall recruitment strategy? Okay, so one of the first and sometimes most challenging steps in embedding storytelling into your strategy is aligning your internal stakeholders. This wasn't a top pain point that you all listed in the poll, but I'm guessing sometimes there's a little bit more going on behind the scenes. So I would love to hear in the chat, kind of looking at these groups on the right, if there's any stakeholders that you collaborate a lot with, or maybe there's a stakeholder group that you're having challenges collaborating with. And if you want to elaborate, we can speak to some of those thoughts too. Just as I'm talking through the slide, just would love to hear what's going on at your organizations. But as we think about aligning stakeholders, a lot of times you might think of employee storytelling as something for talent acquisition or employer brand, which it absolutely is. But a wide range of teams benefit from storytelling, some of which are listed on the right here. So hiring managers, HR, corporate comms, all of these groups have different priorities and goals that they're working towards, and they all can be supported by employee storytelling. So as you think about bringing these groups together, one tip we would share is that you don't have to align everyone all at once from day one. That's just not realistic. So a really great starting point is to partner with just one or two groups that share a specific challenge and are bought into the outcome. So for example, let's say you have a hard to fill role. A lot of you all listed that one as a challenge that you have. So let's say you're looking to hire a ton of nurses. You might align recruitment marketing, talent acquisition, and hiring managers. All three groups are really bought in to attracting nurses. And so bringing that group together, aligning them on an employee storytelling campaign to maximize your outcome. So as you bring those groups in, some best practices that we would suggest. For one, always consider what's in it for them. So you want to frame your employee storytelling around the other group's goals, not just what you are looking to get out of it. So find shared pain points, take a moment to speak their language and really understand where they're coming from. Second, I would say it can be really tempting to go at the content process alone and then bring these groups in later at the end. You know, it's tempting just to stay in your silo, keep your head down, get your work done. But by inviting these partners in early, you really can increase buy-in overall for your employer brand, gather better ideas during that brainstorming period. And a lot of times we've seen with our clients that by bringing these other stakeholder groups in, you can share budget, which allows you to go bigger on your storytelling campaigns and ultimately create a larger impact. And I would say one final tip, and this is something that we've seen time and time again, is that if you have a stakeholder who's maybe a little bit more skeptical around employee storytelling and doesn't quite understand the value, we found that showing them the process, so inviting them to an interview day, or maybe let them preview a video before you release it publicly and talk to them about it. When people see and hear these stories take shape, it becomes really real to them and they start to see the power of storytelling. So for example, one of our clients took, as we were creating the content for them, it was like a library of 10 to 15 videos. They were taking those videos on a roadshow is what they called it. And they were going and showing to leaders, showing to hiring managers, and showing the content as it was getting built to get people really excited who originally weren't a part of the project. Let's see some of these comments here.
Yeah, we have some good questions. I can read out some. So I think we had a good question around, I appreciate a well put together professional video. Any stats on this AARP style video versus put a phone on a tripod in front of a leader and hit record, something a little more raw? So I'm happy to take that, Bernadette, unless you'd like to.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Great. Yeah, Paul, thanks for your question. This is a good one. And so I think the question is around kind of quality of deliverable or video versus something a little more kind of feeling natural. So, or feeling a little more user generated, I should say. And so at Stories, we generally believe that having that strong employee story is really, crucial for the content, and having a facilitated approach is really important for that. We do both, in person and virtual story sessions where we interview folks virtually. I will say, even with virtual or something a little bit more user-generated feeling, having a facilitated approach is still really important. So it's not just a person kind of going off because we don't know that they're going to be able to stick to like a specific story. So having that facilitated approach is really helpful. And I think having kind of consistent look and feel of video content. So if you are interviewing multiple people, having a little bit of elevated from what would typically be like a Zoom or, virtual type of recording. So we send webcams, mic, lights, just to really elevate the quality. But yes, you can uncover a story, both, high quality in person, videographer, and then also in a more kind of lower production while still, highlighting that really important story. So I think both ways are possible. Bernadette, anything to add there?
No, I would nothing to add there. And I see two different people commenting on getting their marketing team invested is a stakeholder group that they struggle with. I will say you're not alone, and that's something that we hear from a lot of our clients. And just the reality is that's why a lot of people work with like companies like Stories Inc., because we're able to help prioritize their content and make sure it gets done. But I will say that that's also a really important stakeholder group to engage. And so a lot of times when we're working with our clients, talking to their marketing and making sure that we are aligned on brand guidelines and that everyone's going to be happy with the finished content is a really important step in our process. So I will also just say you're not alone. You can see it based on this chat that you're not alone.
That's great. And we had another question around from Carlos. For me, this is very important. Some managers are my first barrier. They say their team doesn't have time to shoot videos. Do you have experience on how to overcome this barrier? Another good question, and a few thoughts here. So one is really using this as an opportunity for recognition. So it's not just promoting your brand or doing an employer brand project, but really helping elevate and recognize people on your team or in your company who are doing amazing work. And so using it as that opportunity to really showcase their story, highlight their voice, I think is great. And also just being really mindful of their time. So we typically, for example, if we do come on site, we typically spend 90 minutes to 2 hours with each person. And so being really mindful, we're not blocking off an entire day and being willy-nilly with our time. We're really deliberate. And so once managers hear that, again, it's a recognition tool and, we're really deliberate with the time, generally they are more receptive. But if you have other context or feel otherwise, definitely let us know because we want to help address that.
Awesome. Okay, we'll jump back in, but please keep adding. We might not be hopefully we'll be able to get to every question. We want to make sure we get through our presentation too, but please keep the questions coming. These are great. And I will say one thing I'll add on that hiring manager question is these tips, I think hopefully will help you get on the same page as your hiring manager. So thinking about what's in it for them and how you can present the storytelling initiative with how it can meet their needs. Okay, so once you've aligned with your stakeholders, it's also really important to think about where these stories fit into my recruitment strategy. And I think I saw one other question in the chat on like what type of video is a good one to start with. There's not one answer to that question, and it really depends on what your recruitment goals are. Who are you trying to reach? What does that group care about? And where you can create the most impact, I would say would kind of be my answer to that question. So on the right here, we have our personalization pyramid, which is a really simple way to think about how you can personalize your messaging and create your employee storytelling library for the talent audiences that you care about most. So it's an inverted pyramid. So it's starting from the top here. So your universal stories. So these are your culture-wide themes, mission, values, purpose. I would say Walter's story from earlier kind of falls into this category here. These stories apply to everyone from interns to executives, and they answer the big questions like, why do we exist and what do we stand for? I would say we see a lot of clients starting, I kind of put that in quotes because it's such an ongoing journey, but I think we see a lot of clients starting with these types of stories because they do speak to everyone. So it's if you have nothing, creating the content that can speak to everyone is a great place to begin before you start to narrow your content approach. But that's not always where everyone begins. Another way you can think about personalizing your content library is creating content targeted to key talent segments. So just thinking about which groups your organization is really focused on from a recruitment and talent standpoint. So maybe you are really focused on early career talent, or you have a really strong veteran pipeline, or maybe you've set a goal of gender parity and you're looking to attract and nurture more women into leadership roles. So whichever groups your organization is most focused on, interviewing employees who represent these groups and sharing their stories that show what their experience working at your company is like is a great way to meet that recruitment need. Another way to personalize your content is creating content based on team and job category. So this answers the question, what is it like to work in engineering or sales or manufacturing at your company? And what makes it different than the same team at another company? So trying to, at Stories Inc, we call this team storytelling. So kind of giving each function its own identity within your broader culture to help them stand out from direct competitors in that job group. So even deeper than that is job-specific stories. That's going to be one of our case studies that we share a little bit later in the presentation, but talking about realistic job previews, day in the life videos, and ways that you can give really specific insight into jobs. Okay, so taking everything we've learned, how do you actually launch an employee storytelling initiative? And some of these things are things that Anna was sharing earlier as well. But here's how you can approach your own initiative in 6 steps. So 1, identify your challenge. So asking yourself, are we struggling with candidates not knowing who we are, or is there a really specific role that we're having a hard time hiring for? So spend time talking through that challenge and identifying your audiences and goals. 2, aligning stakeholders. So finding who else in your organization shares this challenge or cares about this audience that you can invite into your solution to make it better. 3 is build a content plan. So identify the culture themes that you'll emphasize. So the parts of your culture that's going to resonate with that audience, the story format, and the channels you'll use. Are we using video on LinkedIn? Are we using emails in our talent community? So for example, if you're looking to support brand awareness, maybe you're going to create 4 compilation videos that bring your EVP and your company culture to life. Once you've built a content plan, you're going to uncover your employee stories, which in our opinion is the most fun and most important part. But as Anna kind of gave insight into earlier, you'll select storytellers that align with your goals and interview them on camera, ideally with a facilitated interview process. So having an interviewer facilitate that conversation, ask those follow-up questions and really help them dive deeper into their experience of working at your company, because that's where you're going to get the best stories. So this facilitated approach gets the highest quality content every single time, and we absolutely would recommend it. 5th is actually create the content. So once you get all of those interviews complete, have them transcribed, and then turn those stories into videos, blogs, graphics to fuel your campaign. And then last, but certainly not least, is to launch the content. So activate your campaign and share stories across your channels, and make sure to measure that performance so that you can show ROI.
Great. So now that we've covered the foundations of employee storytelling and how to think about it strategically, let's kind of bring it down to the practical level. So we're going to talk through 4 of the most common recruitment challenges and show how you can use storytelling as a strategic solution for each of those. For each challenge, we'll also share a quick case study, which is a real example from one of our clients who used story-driven content to address that issue. So the first challenge we hear about all the time is low brand awareness And as we've said, please continue to use the chat and Q&A as questions and comments come up. So this particular challenge can show up in a few key ways. First, we hear nobody's heard of us. You might not be a household name, or you're in an industry where perhaps consumer recognition doesn't translate into candidate recognition. Then there's we look like everybody else. If your messaging sounds just like your competitors, it's hard for candidates to understand what makes you different. We also hear candidates misunderstand who we are. This can happen when your work is complex or when people have outdated assumptions about what you do. So, for example, many financial services companies have really embraced technology in the last decade or so, and they need to show how they're innovative and tech forward today for an audience who might not associate that with banking. And finally, we have an amazing culture that no one knows about. So that's a huge missed opportunity when your current employees love working there, but that doesn't necessarily get reflected externally. So at the core, all of this comes back to one thing: your ability to effectively communicate your culture so candidates know who you are, what you stand for, and why they should care. And I see we have a few more questions, which we can get to in just a moment. Maybe we can batch them in like the next slide or two.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, maybe between these challenges, we can answer a few. So if you're struggling with brand awareness, one way that you can approach that through employee storytelling is launching a brand awareness campaign. And when you think about needing to communicate your brand, the first thing you actually need to do is define your employer brand. So yes, this can happen through a formal EVP development project. So doing focus groups and really building out an EVP, and that's absolutely a great way to do things. But you also can take a more ad hoc approach, and a lot of you probably already know what makes your culture and organization special. You might just not have the specific words and definition on it yet, but it is worth pausing to think about what exactly you want to emphasize about your culture. And you can probably find a lot of these in pulse surveys you're doing with new hires or with long-standing employees, of just asking like, why do you stay? What's resonating with you? And you'll probably hear a lot of the same things. It's like a culture of career growth, or we have great work-life balance, or I really feel like I'm really strongly connected to our purpose. So just hearing what's resonating with your current employees and new hires, and then leaning into that as you build out, exactly what you're going to talk about in your culture content. So first, it is worth pausing a beat to define your employer brand and figure out, what themes you want to emphasize. Once you know what makes you unique, you want to show it in action. So not just saying your culture is collaborative or fast-paced, but leaning on stories that actually show those themes in action. When you think about building brand awareness, you really want to lean into what makes you different. So looking around at your competition and asking yourself, what makes my workplace different from them? Why should someone choose your organization over another? And leading into those differentiators, because those stories are what are going to stand out and help your brand stick and be more memorable. And finally, don't forget to correct misconceptions, if there are any, as you're building out your brand awareness campaign. So if you're, for example, if you're in a space that isn't known for innovation, like defense or healthcare or financial services, use your brand campaign to proactively address those narratives with real examples that show how you are innovative. So here's an example in a short case study from a client of ours. So Stories Inc. partnered with The Knot Worldwide to help bring their employer brand to life and solve two really big brand awareness challenges that they were having. So first, candidates thought they were a wedding planning company, so they had a misconception problem here, when in reality, The Knot Worldwide is a technology company that really has a much broader scope than just weddings. And second, they had a great internal culture that employees loved, but nobody knew about it. So they needed to find a way to communicate that great culture externally to candidates. So to solve that, and so we were the beginning part of their brand awareness campaign, and we'll show how they activated it and stuff here. But To create this brand awareness campaign, Stories Inc., we interviewed 19 employees and created 3 culture videos. And the themes that they chose to focus on were their caring culture, career growth opportunities, and their social impact work, all while including stuff throughout that showed the type of work that they were doing, and that it wasn't wedding planning. Once the content was complete, their team built a really smart launch strategy, and they had a coordinated internal and external launch of the stories. So first, they shared the stories internally at an all-hands meeting to build excitement among employees and really reinforce those employer brand themes. And so then once they had employees just like really jazzed up and excited about the videos, they almost immediately launched the videos externally on their corporate Instagram and LinkedIn channels. And they also, and this is super smart, their team created a media kit to empower employees to also participate in the sharing. So they shared suggested captions, linked to videos, and tips for sharing on social for people who might not be as comfortable doing that. And by creating these media kits, they made it really easy for recruiters, hiring managers, and team members to amplify the content and really blow up the brand awareness they were able to create. And the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the numbers here that in the first 3 days, they experienced 50 hours of video watch time. So that's people that were like sitting down and watching the videos. They had 12,000 impressions in a week on LinkedIn and Instagram, and a 4.42% engagement rate on LinkedIn in that same week. So, and as someone who manages a LinkedIn channel, that engagement rate is amazing and really speaks to their very coordinated effort around this campaign launch. Now, I think we have time. We're going to show you one of our favorite videos from the project. And this one highlights the Not Worldwide's caring culture. So I'll pull this one up.
I like any excuse to celebrate. I like the moments that matter. It's what made me first look at the Not Worldwide.
There's been many instances in my journey here where I have just felt so cared for and so appreciated, and not just because of the work that I do, but because of the person that I am.
I found people, real people that interact with you. You get to know what they're doing. You get to know how they are. And not just like in a meeting, but you can meet them, you can discuss with them. You can share like, moments of celebration, but at the same time, you can share like moments of difficult times.
I've had 2 miscarriages and I was able to take the time I needed. No questions asked. My team stepped up for me. And to be able to do that and not feel like you are falling behind in your career, it's huge. Our chief people officer, she reached out to me and she was like, I'm thinking about you, shared a personal story with me. It was a very big deal to even just have her acknowledge that this is what was going on in a moment where you could feel really overlooked, her taking the time to do that.
That's the community that we've created, is to really say, like, we have each other's back.
We're advocates of one another, and we have a unique opportunity to be able to help empower one another too.
When I got married, we have this event in India called Sangeet. It's an evening where everyone comes together and dances. And there are stage performances that happen. Everyone who has ever reported to me in Wedding Wear India, all the girls were on the stage. I got so emotional. I was like, oh my God, my girls. 1 or 2 of them had moved on. Just seeing them back together on that stage, like one happy family of sisters, that was very special to me. If I look back now and I think why I was able to create this bonds, I think it was because I was given the freedom to be the kind of leader I wanted to be. When you can authentically do that, I think it's easier for you to make stronger bonds at work.
The people are great. It's one of the reasons why I'm here and have been here for as long as I have been. The authenticity and genuine essence of a lot of folks here makes it feel like someplace that I could be forever.
All right, bringing my screen back up here, but I love that video so much. And I think when you think about what it means to have a caring culture, that we heard a story of someone in, a harder time in their life having experienced a miscarriage. And then we also hear an example of someone during, one of the happier days of their life and their team coming together to celebrate their wedding. So being able to really see both sides of the spectrum from people all over the world and all these different cultures, I think is just a really compelling way to show how the caring culture at the Knot Worldwide is real. Awesome. And we do want to make sure we get to all of our challenges here. So I think for now we're going to have to hopefully leave some time at the end for questions, but please keep them coming.
And just a quick note, I'm responding. Continue to put your questions in the Q&A, your chat in the chat. And then for the questions, I'm just responding individually in the chat. So you'll see those come through.
Mm-hmm. And if we don't get to them during the session, we'll follow up afterwards. All right, Anna, over to you.
Okay. And so the next, and Bern, I'm not seeing the screen. So the next challenge that I want to talk about is hard to fill unique and evergreen roles. And so we see this across industries, whether it's specialized engineers, nurses, or roles requiring top-level security clearance. These positions are consistently difficult to fill, no matter the market condition. And there's a few different ways this presents itself. So fierce competition is the first. Dozens of companies are targeting the same narrow talent pool. The best candidates have options, so you really need to stand out. The next is misunderstood value. Often these positions are critical to the business, but not well understood by the general public. Then there's highly specific skill sets. These roles require niche expertise, and there's a limited pool of people who qualify. And finally, low visibility or appeal. In some cases, candidates might not even realize these jobs exist, or they might not seem exciting at first glance. So this is where employer brand and storytelling play a critical role, helping you surface the stories that bring these roles to life, explain their value, and make them resonate with the right audience. Okay, so I wanted to look at another compelling case study. And this is from our, let's see.
Are you seeing the right side on the screen there, Anna?
I am not, but it might be my computer, so I'm just going to keep going. Okay, so let's look at the next compelling case study from our client Stellantis and their Meet the Makers campaign. Stellantis was facing increasing competition for manufacturing talent. And like many companies in the industry, they needed to attract a new generation to roles that are often misunderstood or overlooked. So the employer brand challenge was clear. How do you make manufacturing appealing to the next wave of talent? And the objective was kind of threefold. So first, humanize their leadership to show the real people guiding the company. Next, recognize and celebrate contributions of their current employees. And third, highlight the personal stories behind the vehicles. So not just the product, but really the people who make it all happen. And so they launched the Meet the Makers campaign. This involved interviewing, I believe, 26 employees and producing 28 videos. The campaign focused on telling authentic, relatable stories straight from the shop floor and also from leaders. The videos touched on a range of powerful and relevant themes like career growth opportunities, the exciting and innovative nature of the work, the importance of women in manufacturing, so that helps challenge stereotypes, and overall, like the pride and purpose that employees find in their roles. So this campaign successfully shifted perceptions and strengthened Stellantis' position as an employer of choice in manufacturing. So something that I personally love about this series is the setting of the interviews and how the B-roll footage really shows the environment. And so now we can watch a video from the series that I really love.
Yeah, this is a good one.
One of the things that I love most about my job is when I see what I've been a part of driving down the road. I'm just like, I did a little bit of that. My name is Michelle Menendez, and I am a clay sculptor for Stellantis. I went to college for creative studies. Then I found this job here by chance. I was teaching art, and I received a letter in the mail for a industrial clay sculptor class, which I had never heard of. And I said, I'm going to put my application in. We got to meet a lot of the designers that were in the field. They would assist us and show us sculpted cars. It was just like a whole different world for me. This whole idea of building a car out of clay full size was like mind-blowing. I work in the interior studio. The process begins with the designer's vision. Then we take their two-dimensional visions and take them to the 3D world. We actually build the interiors, the doors, the steering wheels, down to the little knobs that changes your radio station. The cool part is you use specific tools for specific tasks. And a lot of the tools I have made myself in our shop so that we get exactly what we need. I think about how fortunate I am to have this to come to every day. I work with creative people that inspire me on a daily, and I hope I inspire some people myself.
Awesome. I love that video, and I think it really embodies what makes a realistic job preview so great. It shows the work, so the visuals and the B-roll are just really beautiful and really put you in the setting. It brings to life a role that maybe you didn't know about. So if you think about, if you're someone with a creative background and you're like, what on earth could I do in the automobile industry? Like, this really just gives a different look at a different type of job. And then it allows her personal voice to shine and what she loves about her work. So I just love that video.
One of the
All right. So recruitment challenge number 3. And another one that we see a lot is poor candidate conversion. So again, if anyone out there is experiencing this, please share in the comments and share where the drop-off is for you. We would love to hear. But this can show up in a few ways. You could be getting a lot of bounces on your career site. So candidates are visiting, but they're not applying, or they might be dropping off during the application process. So they were compelled to start, but not compelled enough to finish. And then another sign can be low offer acceptance rate. So candidates moving through the funnel, but ultimately not accepting a job offer. And then lastly, something we've been hearing a lot in the current job market is teams who are overwhelmed with too many applicants, many of which aren't qualified. So these are all symptoms of the same challenge, which is that your employer brand isn't helping the right candidates say yes and the wrong ones say no. So how can we solve that through employee stories? To tackle poor candidate conversion with storytelling, the key is to infuse employee stories at crucial decision points. So the moments when a candidate is deciding whether to take the next step. Using stories at these touch points will build emotional connection, provide clarity, and ultimately drive action. So here are on the bottom a couple of the best places that you can do that. Career site is a big one. Over 67% of candidates visit your career site before they apply, which I think is a really compelling number. So it really is such an important place to share stories at a critical conversion point. Job descriptions, so important, but so underused, to be completely honest. So by adding a short video or a quote from someone in the role, kind of like the example that we just saw from Stellantis, can turn a generic job description into something that creates a lot of excitement and really inspires action. And then another really overlooked moment, I think, is the interview process. So using stories in interview prep emails, follow-up touch points, or even more ad hoc recruiter communication. So whether it's a blog post, a short video, or a quote, sharing stories during the interview process can help candidates feel more connected and reassured at every step of the way and prevent that drop-off. So our next case study. So there's so many different places that you can tackle candidate conversion, but one that we really wanted to look at was the ever important career site. So Stories Inc. partnered with a growing global pharmaceutical company, and the challenge that they were facing was really around brand awareness and conversion. So as an emerging pharma company, they were competing against those really big names that you're probably thinking about. And this company had a strong culture and a really compelling purpose, but candidates didn't know who they were or what it was like to work there. And so they were having a hard time converting talent at the rate they needed to support their rapid growth. This company was also defining their employer brand for the first time, and they really wanted to bring it to life and focus on that career site to increase conversion. So Stories Inc. partnered with them to create a full library of employee story content, which included 13 interviews, 12 videos. They chose to focus on their EVP, so like their defined employer brand and brand pillars, as well as creating videos that highlighted key positions and locations around the globe. So they really hit a lot of those different kind of personalization topics that we talked about earlier. And then we also captured a full library of photos that they could use across their entire career site. And after a year of the career site being live, they were really able to look at the data and see, did these stories make a difference? And the answer is they did. So they found that candidates who watched a career site video were 5.5 times more likely to be hired. So that's a really powerful sign that stories helped the right people opt in and move throughout the process. They also saw that 77% of known video viewers started an application. So that tells us that the video content is driving meaningful engagement and action. And finally, 48% of those same applicants, so people who watched a video and then applied, they reached advanced hiring stages. So we know that that video was part of a process that helped drive higher quality candidates. Something that I would also encourage you to think about is looking at what type of data you can find in your career site. So I don't know how much or how little folks out there are looking at their career site data, but it's worth taking some time to look on the back end and see like what opportunities you have to capture data and how you can find these types of numbers, because they also could help you build a case for creating the type of content that you need and measuring your ROI. Okay, we got to our last challenge, Anna.
Thank you. So our final recruitment challenge is something that many of you might be grappling with, which is high turnover. So this is more than just people leaving. It's really a signal that there's an opportunity to improve the candidate to employee journey at your organization. So we often hear a few consistent issues. So things like repeat exits. So you're filling the same role over and over again, which is exhausting and expensive. Slow ramp up. New hires aren't necessarily getting up to speed quickly, and then they're not finding their footing right away. So expectations not matching reality, which can lead to early exits and just a poor fit for the role. And then no sense of belonging. So people might be joining, but they don't feel like they fit. And then lastly, competitor poaching. So your top talent is leaving for another opportunity. And so I'll try to run through some of these quickly. I know we're
case studies. We can answer questions then.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds good. And so I'll skip the one slide to talk about what can these stories look like. So our next case study is a Stories Inc. Partnership with a Fortune 500 gaming company to help them with their annual core value awards. So these awards were already a big deal in their culture, but the company felt like the celebration and engagement wasn't enough. And so they wanted to come up with, they wanted to really elevate this campaign and make this moment really unforgettable. So together we transformed the core value awards into over-the-top surprise moments, all captured on camera. And we helped coordinate the surprises for award winners and followed up with heartfelt interviews with the recipient and their manager, diving into what made the employees so impactful and how they embodied the company's values. So I know many organizations do core values, so this is a really great way to celebrate these winners. So in total, we created 11 videos, 2 per award, and each video told the story in 60 seconds of why this person won, again, capturing their reaction as well as what makes them so special. So then these videos were shared at their annual award ceremony, on their intranet. Employees tuned in from across the company, and this is a campaign that we've run 4 years in a row. So this really shows how storytelling doesn't just support external employer brand, but it can also be a powerful internal engagement tool that brings your culture to life and makes employees truly feel seen. So I know I ran through that quickly, so hopefully I didn't talk too fast.
Yeah, this is such a great campaign. And I didn't want to steal your thunder on this slide, but I think the major takeaways we think about engaging and retaining with stories is finding just different ways through the employee life cycle where you can reinforce your culture and help people remember why they chose you in the first place and why they stay. So onboarding is a great place to get off to the right start. Partnering with internal comms to share stories throughout employees' time at your company. So amplifying events, if you have ERG groups, benefits are a great thing to showcase, as well as recognition, which Anna just spoke to there. All right, we made it. Woohoo! Thanks everyone for being with us today. We have some time for questions at the end, but we just wanted to briefly summarize everything that we have learned today. So for one, employee stories are the most powerful way to communicate culture and convert talent. Align stakeholders early. So really look for ways to bring others in your organization in and get on the same page. The work up front will allow you to maximize your impact. Look for opportunities to personalize your stories by audience. So realistic job previews, early career specific content, whatever talent groups are most important to your recruitment strategy, create content that's really personalized to their needs. And finally, be outcome oriented. So looking at your recruitment challenges, whether it's brand awareness or retention or anything in between, looking for ways that you can align your storytelling efforts will make you feel really good and feel like you can solve a problem, but also will give you the best chance of being able to show you your ROI and show that your storytelling is creating a measurable outcome. At this point, we're going to kind of look through and respond to some final questions, but I do want to say thank you all for joining today. If you want to keep the conversation going, here's Anna and mine's contact information. Here's also a QR code if you want to pull up and subscribe to our newsletter. So if you like how we talk about employee storytelling and recruitment and you want to continue to learn more, please subscribe to our newsletter. We send it out every other Wednesday. So we'd love to have you be a part of our community. At this point, we have a couple more minutes and we can see, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I have it wrong. There we go.
Yeah, we have lots of good questions coming in. Hey, Josh.
Hey, I'm just jumping in. I'm not trying to cut this short by any stretch. But I have uploaded the slides into the handout section. If there's anybody in the audience that do not see the slides, maybe refresh your screen and they should become available for download. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
So I just responded to one question. Someone asked about the career site measurement. I'm not a super techie person, but to the best of my knowledge, the career site platform that person used allowed them to see that data on the back end. So I'm assuming it was through cookies of some kind, but they were able to see like who viewed videos and then follow that career site visitor through their touch points on their career site and be able to see that they applied and then like where they reached the candidate experience.
Great. And then there was a question around how do you approach leaders wanting to stay away from employee names and pictures to prevent becoming out of date as employees leave? Lack of budget is always a challenge. Definitely hear you. Our philosophy is that even if someone left the company or organization, if they left in good standing, then their story is still true. You've gotten a waiver, so it's not like you necessarily have to like scrub them completely from your site. But we also understand that sometimes we do have to be mindful of folks who have left. So definitely it's a question that comes up a lot, but the story should still remain even if they're no longer with the organization. And then lots more good questions, but I think unless any Bernadette are standing out to you, I think we can we'll do some follow-up after this to make sure we're addressing everyone's question.
Yes.
We are at time, but Bernadette and Anna are pretty easy to find online on LinkedIn, especially. So I'm sure they'll be happy to answer questions. And we're going to go through the chat as well, too. So for those of you that ask questions in the chat and we didn't get to you, we can probably follow up after the broadcast. Bernadette and Anna, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to put this presentation together. It was absolutely phenomenal. Did not disappoint. To everybody in the audience, thanks for tuning in. We'll be sending out the recording shortly, so keep an eye on your inbox. And until next time, take care and keep telling those powerful stories that move talent.
Thank you very much.